Happy Friday and good afternoon, MMEA members. My name is Steve Lyons, and today we're going to be discussing music exploration and alternative to performance-based classes. But before we get into that, I just want to tell you a quick little story. I was 16 and a half years old. I grew up outside of Chicago in the suburb of Brookfield, and my favorite rock band, my jam, was Kansas. Loved that group. Had all their albums, the three of them before Leftoverture even came out, before most people even knew who they were. I knew everybody in the band. I knew their names. I knew where they grew up. I knew their stories. And then magic occurred, right? My friends and I had just won the Battle of the Bands in our local high school, playing a song by Kansas. So what a better thing to do than to go together as a band to the Kansas concert and celebrate that with the creators of that music. And thanks to a series of wonderfully unfortunate events, we ended up outside of Chicago Stadium after the concert, and we needed to get back in to retrieve our WLUP Rock Radio Frisbee hat that we were to be given by bringing a big banner welcoming Kansas to Chicago. So we had created the banner. It was pretty lame at best, but we were outside and on a different side of the building, and we found the nearest door, and here stood a very large man with his arms crossed very sternly. We pled our case, and he took pity and said, "All right, you can go in there, get your Frisbee hat, hurry up." Well, it happened to be the backstage door. So we got to go in and chat with all the members of Kansas. And I will never forget the moment. It changed my life when I sat down next to Robbie Steinhardt, vocalist and violin player, and told him we had just won the Battle of the Bands playing the music of Kansas. And he put his arm around me and said, "Son, that's so cool. I'm honored that you played our music. That's really cool. Keep going, keep playing." It was at that moment right then that I knew that I was destined to become a music teacher. Now, if you're like me, right, children are the reason we're doing this. Music is great. It's our tool, it's our medium that we help kids find themselves, ground themselves, and go on to become the best selves that they possibly can. That may involve music as a career, more than likely not, and that's okay too, but they can have that music training and that love of it instilled in them even deeper and richer and carry that with them forever. Now, don't get me wrong, I love teaching band. I love it, love it, love it. Still do as much as I did when I was in my 20s. However, I chased my tail perhaps a little bit less than I used to as a young teacher. But I didn't really go into teaching band so that I could reach 12, 15, maybe 20% on an amazing year of the students in our school. I did it because music is everybody's. Everybody owns music, right? But that's not necessarily the clientele in my high school that I deal with every day. But there are kids that are equally passionate about music, but they never might find their way in the band room doors. So as we look at an alternative to performance-based classes, that's my background. That's where I'm coming into this, is how can we use music to reach a broader audience and do it in a profound way. This is not the best way to teach music exploration. It's just my way. I also had the luxury, having been here at Champlain Park 29 years, having a long relationship with our building administration, and there's a level of trust. So when I came in to teach music exploration, there was no predetermined, here's the curriculum. Basically, I got to design this course from the ground up. It's unique to our school. Other schools in our district have music exploration, and those teachers too are given a lot of free rein to design what's best for their students. So steal, take whatever you can, borrow from what you like in this presentation, and most importantly, make it your own so that it can serve the students in your building. Let's get started. So let's get started. Let's talk about the important or essential questions. And I've already answered for myself on why Music X, right? So that we can take what belongs to all of us, which is music. Most everybody I know has music in their lives, whether it's by choice or by design. It's there when you get in the elevator. It's there when you turn on the radio and get in your car, etc. It's there, right? So why? Because music truly is for everyone. Who is our intended audience? Again, everyone. I find that most of the students that take this class either have some or very little experience in a performing ensemble. And so really our intended audience is everybody who shares that passion with music. And finally, What do we teach? What should be teaching? And Albert Einstein said teaching should be such that what is offered is perceived as a valuable gift and not as a hard duty. But it's really not our gift. We're sharing that gift and we're making it a gift to the students, right? But here's the hard truth question. Do we really want this class to be a non-performance-based class? Well, yes and no. They're not going to come in with 3 to 4 years of experience coming into the high school level in grade 9, or I teach grades 9 through 12, right? But all truths are not always true. They're only true within a context. Yes, the sun rises and sets, but only when you're on the earth, perhaps. The same can be true of performance. I might come into a class with no performance-based classes, and that performance does not need to look like a concert on a stage with an audience. There are many different ways of performing, so that's a question that we can really ask ourselves throughout the duration of this presentation and beyond. Several of the slides presented today are going to be fairly long, and I'm not going to read them to you. You can do that at your leisure, but while those are being read, I will have on the background final projects created by our students. These are original works of music presented by our students. I'll give just a short background on each one. We had a full-fledged garage band, rock band come in and take the class together. They wanted to get better at performing as musicians. They were already very proficient on guitar and bass and drum set and singing in a certain style, as you'll hear. So as you glance over the reading targets, this was a fully fledged proficient group of musicians that took the class together. Happy reading.
Open the door with a ripple.
The next 3 slides are some details in our course syllabus, expectations that I have of the students in class, and also things they can expect from me as well. And after that, there will be a glossing through of a 12-week, week-by-week breakdown of what the students do in class. We'll go through some of those things in more detail in a bit. While you're reading those, our next project was completed by a student who had no background in music since 6th grade. They were a senior the year that they did this. They had no piano skills coming in, and they insisted on playing piano and singing. They were not in choir, which is a shame because her voice is exceptional. And upon hearing her final project, I did bring in a friend of mine who plays acoustic bass, and they recorded it together.
The empty hallway, looking out for what I need. Broken door stands before me, telling me I'm incomplete. I know it's wrong, but I am broken. Can't you see what's wrong with me? Look behind the walls I built up. My broken lies are haunting me. I need someone that I can cling to. Hold me up when I fall. Will you be that one for me? And listen when I call.
Next, we'll walk through some of the primary areas of focus in the course, the first of those being music history. I do give a 2 to 3 day basic overview of European art music, making sure to connect world events and famous people with those time periods. We do not go into in-depth. It is a very cursory, surface level amount of information. We may talk about Columbus in 1492 and put that in the context of a lot of European exploration, a lot of colonization. We will also talk about the diaspora and slavery during that time and put some things into context so when they hear music like this in the future, they can connect it to other things in their lives and prior learning in high school. We do spend quite a bit of time on popular music. You can call it rock and roll, whatever you'd like, but we also have mini sessions in the roots of. I don't claim to be a master of blues, jazz, country, or hip-hop music, but I can absolutely help the students find out that maybe you really dig country music. Let's talk about how it started. So what do those mini sessions look like? Something like this. We'll talk about the roots and the origins of country. I'll give them a study guide. I'll have YouTube clips pulled up so that we can listen to Jimmy Rogers sing Blue Yodel number 2 and understand how yodeling and that kind of played into that Appalachian vibe, and that was the first multi-selling country music record, right? And then the Carter Family by Wills, Western Swing. We go through sort of the evolution of the early parts of country music. And then I'll kind of bring it into some commercial things like the movie Urban Cowboy. But we'll also talk about early radio and country music and how radio stations had call letters back in the days. Chicago had WLS, right, which was the world's largest store, because it was corporate. And we talk about some of those corporate things, Grand Ole Opry. So they would fill out this study guide. We would then, of course, have a quiz on it, which is open notes. So as long as they're paying attention in class, they can do really well on those. The next primary area of focus is music listening, and this is wide open. You'll notice on the 12-week plan, I had a lot of listening examples in there. We listen to a lot of world music and get them around the world. I try to program music that the students may have never encountered or is extremely programmatic. A lot of times we think of programmatic music and it might be a Wagner opera or John Williams of use in Star Wars, but I think anything that has a compelling story sticks with students. Music of protest, social justice, very important in the 1960s and beyond. Listen to Kendrick Lamar today, and there's a lot of social justice discussion in there. We can also use it for form and analysis, and we will break down intro, verse, chorus, bridge, outro, etc. And so using listening as a means of understanding form and how rock music can and has been built over time using large chunks of repetitive material, etc. Inclusion and diversity, making sure that we play music by Redbone, right? Native American community, busting into commercial rock and roll in the 1970s with Come and Get Your Love, or whatever it may be. Women rockers, so many great women rockers, right? Or we can use it to identify the instruments that we're hearing, the style, or the era that it came from, or the genre. So music listening is wide open. One of the ways that we've done that is I'll show you a couple short samples. This first one is electronic dance music from the best of 2018. This is not a song with an intro and a verse and a chorus, but students can understand how to place beats into groupings called measures, right? And how those measures can be used to create a form that you'll notice from measures 13 to 28 here, 16, 8, 8. 1688, and we can see what sound events are happening. So enjoy this and listen to a little bit of EDM. Here's another example by the great K-pop group BTS, which most of our students in high school and maybe even middle school would be very familiar with. They're pretty fantastic. And here is just a very short, I think this is a 2-page analysis that I put together, but this is just the first page. But you can show the chords so they can see the redundancy or the repetitiveness in the harmonic structure. And really interesting here, right, is that the chords really don't change from the verse to the chorus. It's exactly the same. And 8 measures, 8 measures, 8 measures, 8 measures, right? So, and it's really a 4-chord song, which is pretty great. And it kind of shows students that it doesn't have to be incredibly complex if you don't know a lot about chords. You just got to find the right 4 and string them together. But by listening, they're listening to something they probably connect with and enjoy. You can certainly this is on YouTube, so you can certainly give them the whole video, but it's also a nice way to talk about form in music. Another primary area of focus is music theory. Now, I'm a theory geek, admitted, so I'm gonna push these students to make sure that they have a basic conversational level, an element of theory knowledge so that they can discuss music in musical terms. So I want them to be proficient at reading bass and treble clef, build major and minor chords, understand common chord progressions in music. It doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be clear and simple. Read basic quarter and half note rhythms in 4/4 time. We learn to read through playing. I'll get to that later. Identify and label form in popular music, right? So common music vocabulary, and of course, identify note names on piano. I'm just gonna walk you through really quick and let you read it on your own, some of the things that I have put together to help students learn how to build chords. They're very basic. You don't talk to our students in this course, or at least I don't, maybe in the same verbiage and terminology that I would utilize in a band class that I'm teaching. But while we're doing that, we're going to listen to another piece written by a skilled musician coming in. This was a band student who was fantastic on guitar. He had never sung before, so this was his first stab at singing.
When I first saw you, you were walking. You were hanging with your friends. I did not know what I was gonna do. That's when I knew you were the one. You're so beautiful. We would be so good together. You're so beautiful, Brooke, you're the one. Now that I've met you, I've realized that there's so much more to you. The way you laugh and the sparkle in your eyes, that's when I knew you were the one. You're so beautiful.
This is a common chord progression worksheet that I give to my students, and we have at this point completed talking about building major and minor chords. Now we start talking about progressions and how to string chords together. As you glance through and read through this is a project that was put together by students that came into the class with absolutely zero skills in terms of playing an instrument, singing, anything. They had very little experience doing that. So I brought in a bunch of things from my kitchen, some mixing bowls and a garbage can, and we grabbed a big garbage can from the custodians, and on the spot we improvised a kitchen jam utilizing things found in our kitchen. So as you read this, enjoy kitchen jam number 1. next primary area of focus is reading and writing lyrics. My expectation is students will increase vocabulary of rhyming words. So we can start out as simple as reading a Dr. Seuss book, but then I've created a couple sheets that are digital now that I'd be happy to share that give a primary word, and they need to come up with 4 words that rhyme with that. We also talk about alliteration. We study other lyrics to see what other musicians have done. We talk about expressing ideas in a variety of ways. You can be very direct and obvious, or we can be a little more crafty in terms of using simile, metaphor, the power of suggestions. We talk about lyrics. Having long lyrics really exacerbate problems. Just be succinct and get your point across. And we also talk and listen to examples, and that can be tied in with the music listening, is songs that are written in lyric mode, which is generally a first-person narrative describing the narrator's feelings or emotions. James Brown's I Feel Good is a great example of that. The dramatic mode, which is like a speech or address to someone or something. Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive, again, a very declarative piece in the dramatic mode. And then narrative mode, where we're really telling a story. I love Harper Valley PTA by Jeannie C. Riley because I listened to it as a kid. None of these students that are going to school today have heard this piece at all. But I love it because it's in third person at the beginning. It's about this story and these people, and she shifts the narrative right at the very end. That's the day my mama socked it to the Harper Valley PTA. So it's really clever and gives them, again, just some examples of how to be clever and crafty in your lyric writing. Another primary area of focus is guest artists that come in. And my hope for this, when I bring a guest artist in, which was really easy to do during distance learning, and the musicians that we brought in via Google Meet or Zoom, we're also super happy to get some work, is not that they become proficient on any one of these areas, but they talk to somebody who's very proficient, and that professional then would give them a basic understanding of the instrument and understanding the basic skill set that's required to be a successful working musician. So we brought in folks on electric and acoustic guitar, piano, electric keyboards, drums, bass, vocalists, also specialists in recording, the recording industry or sound, and also from time to time lighting. So what does that look like? The following is just some notes. I would give the students this worksheet. As the guest artist comes in, they would fill it out. The anatomy of the instrument is already given to the students, but then they would get famous gear or brand names of quality instruments. What are the power or electronic needs, special playing techniques, the function of the instrument within an ensemble. Really critical and important. Any tips or tricks to make things easier or cool things you can do. I generally present on drum set because I'm fairly skilled at that. And so showing students what a double stroke or buzz roll is like, and that your wrists don't really have to go as fast as those notes sound, is a tip or trick. Stick twirls, getting everybody to twirl sticks, is they have way too much fun with that. Right? Some things, what was the greatest thing of interest that I learned today? Pro players on this instrument that I should listen to. So again, just kind of giving them a mile wide and an inch deep. But if they do, if like, oh, I love the guitar, but I just don't know anything about it, now they have a starting point. The next area of focus that we have is a try it. You might like it. We're fortunate at Champlain Park High School. One of our middle schools was trying to get rid of some really old equipment. So we have about 8 or 9 electronic keyboards. Our model is the Yamaha Portable Grand DGX-203. And the thing that I love about these instruments is they have a bunch of cool features. In addition to a bunch of different voices, they come loaded with some songs that you can play if the students want to, but they also have this thing called auto accompaniment, which is amazing. So you can push down one button and it's going to create this really cool part that as a novice, I could never figure out how to build or write on my own, but I can certainly figure out, push some buttons and press this one, and all of a sudden magic happens, and it's great. And it also comes with drum beats, and you can multi-track on this instrument, which is really fantastic. So they get to play some piano and keyboards in class. We play some very basic melodies from rote. We do some chord building based on the theory that we've learned, and then we also discuss how to record and multi-track on these things, which is really cool. We do some basic hand drumming. I also teach a West African drumming class, and we have a very robust collection of West African drums. And we utilize that in our music exploration class to read basic whole, half, and quarter note and eighth note rhythms, and we just play them on the drums. And the kids love that. It's so fun to play hand drums, and they're reading at the same time and building proficiency in some basic literacy, which is great. We talk about rhythmic complexity through the layering of easy rhythms. And we also talk about some basic West African and Latin American drumming traditions and musical traditions. We also are fortunate enough to have about 13 or 14 acoustic guitars. I think 9 of them actually work and have all the strings. And so we build some basic major and minor. I know all 4 chords personally, so they have the option to explore some guitar. Again, we don't go very deep, but we build some basic chords. I also show them how to access online chord charts so that they get in finger position charts so that they can go deeper into that if they wish. And finally, we also teach them to be a music critic, where we'll listen to music. We'll talk about identifying, a good music critic has these 7 basic components in their critique. And we actually were able to bring John Bream, who wrote Forever for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and he was really great. And to have your high school students here, yeah, man, I smoked weed with Paul McCartney. That's pretty cool. Their kids and their teacher were shocked, but there it is. I will also provide students a rubric so they can see how they're going to be graded and assessed on that. Generally, with our music critic, we go to YouTube, and I'll find maybe Queen performing at Wembley Stadium for Live Aid in 1945, but there are so many online recordings that you could have it be anything that might be of interest to your students. Our next primary area of focus is going to be digital audio workstations, or DAWs. And this is where, especially during the time of COVID, these are just fantastic. There's one called Chrome Music Lab Songmaker, which is very basic. It's also very free, and it also has some other really fun tools that you can utilize. GarageBand, if you happen to have an Apple platform, does not work on a non-Mac. Bandlab is free and available on most operating systems. There's a basic version that's free, and it will work on phones, computers, laptops, Apple, PC, you name it. It's great. For more advanced things, FL Studios, that is a fairly high price tag depending on what level of sophistication you want to get. But the neat thing here is, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to know everything. You have students that will know this. I had 2 students just this past trimester that were very skilled in FL Studios. They presented to the class. They shared their screen. I learned a lot, as did the other students. Logic Pro X, which is also an Apple product only, is also great, and that's becoming more of an industry standard with home engineers that do a lot of studio work and recording, and it's pretty good as well, but also not free. So we're going to take a quick peek at Songmaker and Bandlab so you can just get an example of what those look like. Chrome Music Lab is a very basic digital audio workstation. Here's your landing page. They've got some fun things. Voice spinner, you can record your voice and play it backwards or go faster forwards. A couple other things, but we're going to take a quick look at Songmaker. And in Songmaker, it's as easy as point and click, which is really nice. It's got a variety of sounds. You can have piano, strings, woodwind, synth, marimba. As a percussionist, I kind of like marimba. On the bottom down here, you can create some drum beats with wood blocks or a drum kit, conga, electronic sounds. So I'm going to keep the drum kit in there. And as we go to settings, you can have your piece be anywhere from 4 to 16 measures long. You can put it in 3/4, 2/4, 4/4, whatever you want. You can go, I think, up to 7/4, which should be adventurous. Then you can subdivide the beats. So by 4, we now have 16th notes, which is great. We can be major, pentatonic, or chromatic. We can start in a middle, low, or high register, and then we can have 1 octave. We can go up to 2 octaves, and we're good to go. And then we can also adjust our tempo. I'll go ahead and leave this at 120 beats a minute. So we might want to start with our drum beat. Right, so that's going to be a little funky. Right, so it doesn't need to be that advanced. It can be really quite simple. And then we just start clicking in boxes, and students will come to learn that each box is low to high. We can double click in this, or just click in the same box and it disappears. And there's your octave. So really simple, right? So that's a rather advanced one. Sorry, simple. Let's take a look at a more advanced one now. And here's Bandlab. I really like Bandlab because it is really advanced. Here's our landing page. You need to set up an account. All you need to do is utilize an email in order to do that. So I have our students always use their school email. They never have to share any personal data, which is nice. And once you've got that account set up, you end up at the main landing feed page, they call it. And all you need to do to really get started, some of these things on the side, you can share your stuff just like you can on Instagram and Twitter and some other things. But I'm going to go to create. And the first thing I'm going to do is browse loops. And this is where your students with very little experience can get going fast right away. They have a huge public domain loop library. And so you can look at different genres. You can just go right to loops. They've got packs of things. So I'm going to go with my tribal techno percussion. That sounds pretty cool. And here is where you're going to have and set up additional tracks. You can specify the tempo by clicking in it and changing it. You can specify the meter. You can use some tempo markings in there with taps or not. And you just start listening to loops. This will tell you what this is and the tempo. So let's take number 15. All I do is click and drag. And now I've got my shake race sound there. I'm going to put that over to the play head. And if you want to keep that going for a longer time, you just click in this top right button and you can drag that over and make it go as long as you want. If I want to add something to that, I'm going to add a track. I can go to those loops again. And I've got some percussion things. We've got techno percussion. We'll go down here. Maybe I want that at the beginning, but maybe I don't. So you can just click and drag that. And again, you can repeat that as much as you would like. I'll go to my genres, run electronic. Here's my instruments, percussion, great. And I will stop that. That's a little ridiculous. All right. So if I go back to the beginning, playhead, press play. Right? And there we go. Now, if I want to add another track, maybe I'm going to hand put in a clapping part. So I can go to voice mic Now, the one thing I need to say here is before I hit record, it'll give me a couple clicks and I'm in. You're going to want to have students have headphones in while they do this, because what you'll notice really quick on my computer is it is going to record the tracks being played again. So they're actually in there twice, not only one time. And that's going to create a pretty weird echo thing. And I'll zip that back to the beginning. And there we are, and it's in there, and I can go back and add another track. I can add the voice microphone. This allows you to utilize a keyboard, MIDI instruments, music instrument digital interface, or you can actually plug in with a USB cord, a guitar or a bass. And if I want to bang on my desktop now, I can start again. And there we go. So now I can listen to my recording. Right? That's not going to win a Grammy Award, but there you go. And you can go to the basic loop, and there are just literally thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of these. And the cool thing is you'll notice we have one in B minor and then in C major. When you drag them over here, it puts them all in the same key for you, puts them all in the same tempo for you. It's really great. You can get bass lines. Special effects. Strings, more bass, Fender Rhodes, guitars. So all kinds of just really great sounds, and there's literally just thousands of these once you get into the loops, the basic loops over here. So it's great. So I was a little bit narrow-minded in terms of my adding only percussion sounds, but if you go to loops, there's just tons of stuff. Students layer them in there. It's as easy as getting rid of a part as clicking and hitting delete and add tracks. Now, the other nice thing about this is, look at this. Right here, you can add collaborators to your project and share this digitally. So we actually use this in band class some, where we were doing trios and somebody would record their part. They would collaborate with two others and send this recording to them. The other person would put their part over the top of that in track number 2, send it to player number 3, added it in track number 3. And voila, we had recorded a trio and nobody was ever in the same room. So there's so many nice functions with Bandlab, and you can also add your teacher as a collaborator and share it directly with your teacher, which is really neat. So a lot of functions, totally free, pretty fun for the students to get their hands wet with in terms of a digital audio workstation. When we're not in the midst of a global pandemic, one of the large projects that students will work on will spend 3 to 4 days in a computer lab doing research. The students will group and do a decades presentation. What is that? They're paired in groups of 4 to 5 students. They select topics within their group to research. They create a PowerPoint or Google Slide project, and then they make a 45-minute to 1 hour presentation to the class on an entire decade of musical events. So what might that look like? Here's the worksheet that students start from, looking at major musical trends, styles, and genres, major musical performers and artists, top gear and gear manufacturers, significant historical events, during that decade. So, gosh, that could take forever. Other significant non-musical people that were in the decade, and then interesting facts and trends. So we're going to zip through the 1950s really fast. This is a sample decades presentation. And this group of students went year by year, and they had significant historical events in each of those years throughout the decade. Like the nice tie into McDonald's there when hamburgers were 5 cents, right? And they also interspersed in here a few things having to do with music, but a lot of it, Sputnik 2, the very beginnings of the space race, etc. Microchip was invented, all kinds of things that really have very little to do with music. But again, putting that in context. Then they have some significant people here that were born in the 1950s, and a list of famous people that were active in their full adulthood in the 1950s. Pop culture and fashion, what cars were popular in the 50s, what were typical things that teens wore during the 1950s, and what was going on with sports. And this team did a great job recognizing that baseball was finally starting to get more integrated with people of color, with Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks, Go Chicago Cubs, Willie Mays, Jackie Robinson, Larry Doby. What was going on in sports, who were the major sports heroes of the day, and they did a great job getting Babe Zaharias Dietrichson in there, and Althea Gibson, which is really cool. So they did a nice job in terms of equity. What were the famous toys that kids were playing with during that decade? That was interesting. And then finally, who were the major record labels, dominant styles of music, and then the beef of what they were really doing. So they defined this by genre and gave us YouTube links so that we could go listen to little snippets of popular rock and roll musicians. Buddy Holly, Bobby Darin, yeah, right? In rock and roll, who knew? Great. Pop music, kind of our crooners with Frank Sinatra, the Andrews Sisters, Nat King Cole. Country music, right? Gene Autry, Everly Brothers, June Carter Cash, Les Paul and Mary Ford. Really cool, right? Our early guitar heroes, if you will. R&B. So really, this group did a fantastic job, so complete. Jazz, we had a lot of bebop going on. Ella, Miles, Sonny, Charlie. And then manufacturers of gear, Fender and Gibson guitars. Gretsch also making guitars and drums. My first drum set was a Gretsch, cool. Ludwig, right? Electronics, microphones, etc. And then they had some conclusions and some final thoughts there about DJ Alan Freed that promoted race records. And there was a lot of talk in that early time about the segregation of musical cultures, and yet teenagers, right, were the ones that were really buying into good music is good music, regardless of who does it. And there was much more integration going on from a musical standpoint. So, going forward, what were some major changes to the curriculum due to COVID-19? Much more emphasis on digital audio workstations. By sharing my screen, we were able to go through Bandlab much more in depth, and students could really get a good jump working on Bandlab at home. And most of our final projects were workstation-based. Not all, though. We did some live recording safely with masks and big social distancing. We did discard the decades projects and presentations, and in its place, utilize Time Warner's The History of Rock and Roll edited. What do I mean by that? First of all, this is a 10 VHS tapes or 5 DVDs, and it's divided into decades and big musical trends. It's a fantastic documentary, super interesting. I used worksheets with it that I bought actually from a teacher on Teachers Pay Teacher that who's a history teacher, put together a great 47-page document to go with this. And the students worked on our asynchronous learning days to watch those and complete them. And when I say edited, there's a lot of language that would not be permissible in the school classroom. There's a lot of visual elements that would not be permitted in the school classroom, and some really harsh words back in the 1950s in terms of the N-word is used, the F-bomb is dropped a lot throughout the duration of these videos. Late 60s, early 70s, there's full female frontal nudity. And so what I did is I bought the DVDs and was copyright compliant. I imported them into a video editor that I purchased, and I was able to take out all the offensive language, and I was able to delete scenes that were also not school appropriate. So it's a fantastic DVD set. It's going to need some modifications for sure. Okay, some budget considerations, because the class, we don't have a budget per se for the class, but we do have money for technical and professional services. So I do pay our guest artists $50 to $75 per person. $50 if it's remote. They can just come right out from the guitar studio and where they have all their pedals set up and everything, and we can do it as a digital thing, which was great during COVID. But if they're in person, at least $75 to come in, haul your gear, set up, teach the kids. And I always give our guest artists where the worksheet that the students will be taking notes on, etc., so that they know kind of what they should be teaching the students, etc. And then recording, mixing, and mastering. Our final project is a CD. I'll share more about that in just a moment, where generally, again, non-COVID times, students come into the school on one day. We set up the times where they get 30 minutes per group, and they perform their piece. And I hire a professional recording engineer to come in, live mics, everything in our school auditorium. So $500 for one live recording session, and then mastering all the tracks, even the ones that were done by the students on a digital format. We do own most microphone stands and cables, but our recording engineer brings all the recording equipment in terms of his deck and pre-recording. If somebody's rapping over a pre-recorded track, we load that in days in advance so that that's ready to go. And he also brings cables and microphones as well. CD artwork and duplication is anywhere between $150 to $250, depending on the quantity that you order, and our students complete all the artwork. So about $1,000 seems to be about right. So that's really not too much. And I want to show you, so our final project is a CD of all the student projects, and we've had one every year, and they've been really incredible, just really incredible. So as I share out some resources at the end here, I'm going to play just a few more tracks that students have put together. The first one that you'll hear is two girls that came from Mexico 4 weeks into the class. Their English language was incredibly limited. I'm halfway okay at speaking Spanish, only halfway. So, and yet their final project was done on one of our Yamaha keyboards, and it's just incredible. So this has been a great class for English language learners. They also were able to share out some information of music from Mexico, which was really great. You will also hear a spoken word poem written by a student, and our final project we'll share with you is one that was done by two students, completely digital. They did not know one another before the course started. This was done just this past fall, and we live recorded the female vocalist, and the gentleman did all the digital work on FL Studios at his home, sent us that track. We recorded with the young lady Joy, and we sent it back to TJ, and he put his vocals over the top, and then we mastered it, and it's just incredible. And we're also very proud of this year's artwork. So enjoy those tunes, and our CD this year was Through the Screen. Thanks for joining us today. I'll also leave you with some resources, things that really helped me on my way figuring out what we are going to teach and how, and also my contact information. If you'd like to contact me at any time and discuss any of this stuff, please feel free to do so. Love this course, love what it does for our students, and it's just great to showcase their work. Thank you to MMEA for the opportunity to present this session, and have a great rest of your clinic.
Hacerme el mal, ya no dejaré que me pase. Fui una tonta. tonta por pensar que cambiarías, pero bueno, así es la vida. La vida es muy dura y de eso no me queda duda. Mi vida hoy cambió, todo por tu culpa. Solo queda darte las gracias.
They say a mother should cry when her child is born, then rejoice when they are dead. Happiness and peace are replaced by wars and suicides instead. Our world is full of corruption. What a shame, what a shame. But us as people, really, who are we to blame? Our world is so divided. Who can the citizens confide in? The ones with more power and capability lied to us. Another shootout in North Minneapolis. What a sad sight to see.
This is how I feel. I speak of falling in love. I always dreamt of someone. I don't know if it's you. I'm just being real. I don't mean to offend you, but I don't wanna pretend to like I'm in love with you.
It's been 2 whole days and I'm making you nervous. We be stuck at the bottom, working up to the surface, and we always fuss and fight, and it wasn't so perfect. Took so much time to find out it wasn't worth it.
A lot of people change and we change too. Remember dark times when you came through. You always put it down and I'm thankful. But now when I look at you, I know she ain't you.
And now things are different and we became so distant. Steady reminiscing, yeah, you know that I'm missing all the things we did, all the things we said. I steady think about it all the time, laying in my bed, but it's a different type of feeling when you're trying to count a million and the issues stack up all the way to the ceiling. I can't have no feelings, can't let that get in the way, cause my ambition, my mission is just to get paid.
You change, people change, and we change too.